Inside the Birds is back. What's up, everybody? It's Geoff, Mosher, and Adam Caplan for an Inside the Birds podcast. And it's a strange time in the Eagles' schedule. They're coming off a Thursday night win. They don't play again until Monday night, the following Monday, when they play Adam a surprising 2-0 Tampa Bay Bucaneers, who are looking pretty good right now, to the surprise of maybe many, including myself. But look, the Eagles are 2-0. We know that out there are some people that are not exactly thrilled with how 2-0 looks. But as I think you look over the first 2 weeks, you've seen some upsets. You've seen some weird games, the Arizona-New York one, right? Perfect example. You think a game's in the bag, and it's totally not. To be 2-0 with all that's going on around the Eagles, I think they're in pretty good shape. Yes, they've got some stuff to work out. We obviously know that. It's a new year. Look at the Kansas City Chiefs, right? But being 2-0 right now, I think, is really advantageous for where they're at.
Yeah, their opponent this Monday night, boy, talk about a cake schedule. They won in Minnesota. Hey, it's a road win, but Minnesota's not very good. And they beat a really bad Chicago Bears team, one of the bottom three teams of the National Football League. So they've taken advantage of their schedule. And so have the Eagles. I mean, they've won. Look, as Geoff just said, hasn't looked pretty the first two games, but certainly some standout things. And this show today, because we're doing actually 4 shows this week because they don't play till Monday. This one will kind of encompass what we saw this past game, moving information forward, and then we'll follow up with kind of what the week looks like on Wednesday's show and update injuries and transactions as the week goes along. But look, again, they won the game. Some great stories, man. The DeAndre Swift story, we begged them to play him, literally begged them. That was obviously a terrible mistake in week one. He should have played. That was ridiculous. Mm-hmm. I think we're really missing some juice in the backfield. That's what we were looking for.
Right.
We learned something about Rashad Penny, which we'll talk about today. Well, we kind of knew, but we didn't know it to this degree. Goodness gracious. Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, talk about not wanting to play a player on your roster until you absolutely have to. I mean, that's what that was about. But certainly lots of information to update here.
Yeah, totally a lot to go through. This is going to be a big week for Inside the Birds in general, as the weird schedule has made us adjust a little bit. Obviously, today you have a normal Inside the Birds pod. Tomorrow, Tuesday, the season debut of Quentin Michael and Jason Avant's podcast Q&A, which is a huge favorite on the ITB platform. So they will be on Tuesday. On Wednesday, you'll have our second ITB pod of the week. It's kind of our midweek mashup with some injuries, transactions, anything that needs to be addressed. But you'll also have what I think is going to be one of the most compelling gun-on-one interviews on Wednesday. If everybody enjoyed the first week, which was a very lighthearted and really fun look at Jeff Stoutland's first ever offensive line coaching job at Cornell in '93 and the interview with the Cornell lineman, it was the stories were great. I hope everybody checks it out. But this week, a much more different kind of tone. It's a very candid discussion that Derek Gunn has with our own Jason Avant about his rise from pretty much being a violent street gang member to being what he is today, which is just a great former football player, an activist, a philanthropist, an entrepreneur. What it took to get from there to where he's at now is an incredible story, and it'll be chronicled on Gun on One. You're not going to want to miss that on Wednesday.
I did not know this when you tipped me off to this last week. I was just shocked. I didn't know this about Jason. What a story to tell. And he's from Chicago, right?
Yeah. Chicago, some of the roughest streets of Southside Chicago, and his story. I don't think a lot of people. I know it's been out there that people know that he came from Chicago and he had it rough growing up, but I don't really think, and credit to Jason for this, to really going deep into how deep he was into it as far as being a street soldier and pulling himself out of it. It's a really fascinating story, and you really don't want to miss it. Thursday is going to be Inside the Tape with Clay Harbor and Greg Cosell, which probably had as good of a debut last week of any show that we've ever had. So I'm really happy that show hit the ground running, and it was excellent breakdown. So that's Thursday. Friday, of course, this will be our last ITB pod of the week. It'll kind of be like a game preview type pod that we normally do. But then, of course, Monday we'll have the pregame show and postgame show for inside for the game and everything like that. So it's a busy week, and listen, we got a lot to talk about, Adam.
Yeah, so we can update some stuff. Yeah, some transactions. Let's get to that first. So
Yep. Oh, and by the way, real quick, just
Yeah.
if people didn't catch it, John
Oh, yeah.
Filippo is doing his weekly breakdown, all 22 breakdown of the Eagles offense with us for our Patreon members. That's patreon.com/inside the birds. The first one was up. It got really well received. It's just another different viewpoint. Greg watches a lot of tape. Clay watches tape. John's got a guy who's coached in the league for a long time and he sees things. And I thought you did a great job, Adam, really getting to the root of that week 1 win over New England and what the offense looked like and why it looked that way. So it was really good stuff.
Right, and we'll talk to Flip on Tuesday, and then we Tuesday night we're going to do our bonus live stream.
Yep.
Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern. You and I, with lots of questions, discussions with our Patreon subscribers, and then Wednesday I have my chat at 8 p.m. Eastern on Discord, and hopefully in the near future we got a couple new things to announce there. So stay tuned for that. If you want to subscribe, it's patreon.com/InsideTheBirds.
Right. All right, great stuff. So some transactions have happened. One of them was very strange when it happened, but then once you see why it happened, it makes a lot of sense. We'll start off first with the running back, Trey Sermon. He was waived off of injured reserve, which means two things. One, he's healthy now, correct, Adam? You have to be healthy.
Well,
they reached I'm sorry, go ahead.
They didn't reach a settlement. No, he was not waived injured, surprisingly. Which... Quite frankly, I'm thinking, because typically, you have to reach an injury settlement for a guy who's hurt. So maybe whatever injury, we were told it was around 3 weeks anyway when he got hurt. In fact, we don't even know what the injury is. We had the ankle injury previously. We don't know if it's a new one, the old one. But nevertheless, to move this along here, he could be claimed today. Today's money, he could be claimed by a team at 4 p.m. Eastern. If he's not, he's eligible immediately to sign their practice squad. So we'll see what the Eagles do here. And also, there was a note from ESPN that said that Rashaan Evans, they just signed, wasn't here long. He asked out of his contract, his practice squad contract, which, by the way, he can terminate it. He's able to, a player can terminate their own practice squad contract. So he asked out. And he, apparently the report from ESPN says that there are teams that have interest in him for a better role here. I mean, to be honest with you, if he's willing to wait a bit, could be 3-4 weeks, maybe he would have had a chance at pretty serious playing time because the Eagles are down with linebackers here. We'll talk more about linebackers later in the show. But hey, he decided that he wanted out, and he is.
That's what surprised me, because even if they said, hey, wait 2 or 3 weeks, or probably is going to be something open up, maybe he did the math and said, yeah, but that's maybe when Nakobe Dean comes back. But you know how it is with the Eagles linebackers. I mean, like tomorrow, a spot could get something happen.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm being facetious, but yeah, I was a little surprised by that, but we'll see where he pops up. And so obviously from the injury front, Adam, not looking good on Avonte Maddox. I know that the team hasn't officially come out with a statement yet, but there's been enough reports and of it not of a pec and it being a serious injury that and look, this is the deal with Avonte Maddox. He's been getting hurt quite a bit, and this is unfortunately for the Eagles, like wash, rinse, repeat. They're going to be undermanned in the slot, and that's an area that hurt them at times last year. Not a whole lot, obviously, in the win-loss column, but they're going to have to figure out how to make do there.
All right, a couple things here. So he's got a torn pectoral muscle. If it's a full tear, he's done for the season. If it's a partial tear, he definitely could come back late this season if it's only partial. I've seen plenty of players come back if it's partial. Full tear, no chance. Mario Goodrich replaced him as the nickel. The scouting report on him is that you like the smarts. He's got ability to be a slot corner in this league, but to ask him to do it full time the rest of the season is a big ask. We know that Bradbury, obviously he missed this game with a concussion. He took some reps inside in training camp. They're obviously going to have to sign somebody. They don't have a choice here. We'll see what they do and see what the workouts look like tomorrow. Let's keep an eye on that. Quez Watkins, by the way, will move over to now. We'll go for the full injuries here. Boston Scott had concussion. Kenny Gamble did not play with the ribs. We'll get to kind of what that rotation looked like in our second segment here. Quez Watkins got hurt early, did not return with a hamstring injury. Bradbury missed the game due to concussion. Reed Blankenship missed for ribs. Boy, this has been this early in the season, man. They've got a pretty extensive injury list here. One is serious here with Maddox, And Sirianni, I believe, talks later today. I'm not 100% positive, but I believe he does.
I think so too, yeah.
Yeah, so he'll almost certainly update that if he is speaking today. But the bottom line is they were down to 2 running backs. Oh, another thing is they did not have a running back in the practice squad. Now, their thinking was, hey, they had 4 on the 53. Did they really need a 5th on the practice squad? But they're down to 2 healthy running backs on the 69-man roster.
On the 6, that's right. We have to call it a 69-man roster now. 2 healthy running backs. Now, yeah, I get the Nick Sirianni press conference today will be very important if that happens, and if he gets into injuries. Usually with the concussions, it's just tough to make it, unless it's a very serious head trauma. It's tough to make it to a Thursday game, but they don't play until Monday.
Sure.
So you'll maintain some optimism that Boston Scott will be back by then, and maybe even I would think James Bradbury and Reed Blankenship, but we'll just have to see. We need to get the report. In other words, it looks a little dire right now, but as by this time tomorrow, there could be a lot of a different vibe about that.
Yes. So basically today, typically after you have the mini bye, you do a light practice on Monday. Now, because they have a Monday night game, that should mean they get Tuesday and Wednesday off. And then the regular practice week is always 3 days, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Now, there are some teams, Belichick has done this, where he brings them with that same schedule. They've worked Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. But obviously depends on how the team is doing and so forth, what the coach thinks. But that's simply the way it works, is that they don't practice till the real practice week starts on a Monday game, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. So there you go. First segment over. A lot of injuries. And this is, the related receiver to begin with, Zacchaeus replaced Watkins, as you know, and he just didn't really get – I mean, you saw him block on a play, actually had a nice block, but quite frankly, just really not used as a receiver.
Yeah, no, not yet so far. So we'll see going forward what happens there. All right, we'll get into a few players and role changes and things that we've observed over the first week and then in game 2. First, as we always tell you, to check out our friends at Atlantic. Check out our friends at Ocean Casino Resort, which overlooks the Atlantic Ocean.
There you go.
It's really beautiful in September, by the way. It's really cool to be able to get down there in September. But our friends at Ocean Casino Resort, it is the exclusive Jersey Shore resort of Inside the Birds. Let's hear from them right now.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
All right. So let us talk about some of the role changes. You alluded to the running back. Yeah, I mean, there's no question, and I don't even think it's going to be, well, every time I want to dive into this, Adam, with you've got to play DeAndre Swift more. I think that's pretty obvious, right?
They OD'd.
Yeah, I know. Listen, I don't think that it's going to all of a sudden turn the table to become now 80% DeAndre Swift and 20% Gainwell. If there's one area where you can see why the coaches like Gainwell a little bit more over Swift, it's in pass pro and blitz pickup. Not that Gainwell is, Deuce Staley, but Swift is small, and I think he had the holding, right, that took back the touchdown.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was on DeAndre Swift, but you can see why the coaches sometimes would be reluctant to throw him out there in certain situations if the defense is going to be aggressive. But that being said, yeah, like the explosion that we talked about that he has obviously went on display.
So if you really look at the totality of his career, just to explain to you how odd it is for him to have over 15 carries. He's only had 15 carries or more in his career in 3 games.
Yes.
The Lions had moved on from him. They made a decision that they no longer would be able to keep him because they just did not feel like he could stay on the field. Actually, 4 games of 15 carries or more. Now, he had one ridiculous game, and I don't know why they did this. He had one game of 33 carries.
It was an overtime game, though.
Okay, there you go. Now, I don't know who was not available because that's just ridiculous. He's just not solidly built.
Right.
He's somewhere, the sweet spot should be 12 to 15 carries a game, no more than that. Now, what we learned is, I think we all saw this, the coaches were not going to play Penny pretty much no matter what. What happened was either he was as you saw him on the sidelines, he left, you saw him run to the sidelines. He might have a cleat, a spike replaced. I'm not sure what it was. You just saw him sit on the bench for like 30 seconds. Then he got up, Penny got some carries, and he went back in a couple minutes later, and then Penny was never heard from again.
Right.
So clearly, now we had mentioned on our pregame show that Penny had a very mediocre preseason. We had a scouting source that told us watching the Eagles, the game that he played in preseason, he didn't look explosive. So, hey, he had a mediocre training camp. Okay, he was the 4th running back. But you're asking for it with DeAndre Swift by overworking him like that. 28 carries, and he was awesome. no doubt. And the thing is, let's give the O-line credit. He could literally choose what gap he wanted to go to, A or B gap. And his ability, I think we all know watching, Swift is way more talented than Gainwell. It's like Gainwell's in AA, Swift is in major leagues, okay? Mm-hmm. It's just a matter of how do you want to work the rotation now. Swift is now in it, obviously. You can't go. Gainwell cannot be the main guy now. This is what we were expecting at some point reasonably early. Now it's happened. Mm-hmm. And here's the thing, though. Had Gainwell not gotten hurt, they probably wouldn't have done this. In fact, that we know they wouldn't have done it.
That's a good question. Right. I mean, they certainly wouldn't have given him the 24 carry or whatever. 28 carries. Right. I do think he was going to get worked into the game plan more, but obviously, you've got to be able to learn from this and say, yes, we do. If we're going to get 30 carries in a game because we won, right? Let's try to make it, 13, 13, and 4 for Boston Scott because he's got to get his 4 carries. Right. Or 14.
He looked great. Too. He looked great. 5 for 40.
He looks like the 3rd best running back on the Eagles.
And by the way, I think you could have got 20 yards in this game. That's how big the holes were.
Yeah, so I'm glad you mentioned that because I don't want people to confuse what we're saying because I believe if Kenneth Gainwell had started and seen a lot of carries, he also would have had 100 some odd yards. That's the yards before contact that Eagles running backs were picking up was ridiculous.
That's incredible.
And the whole idea, Jason Avant talked about this in the pregame show, a Thursday game, it almost benefits the Eagles strategically because most teams get simple on Thursday nights, right? Like you can't do too much stuff, especially this early in the season. You can't throw the kitchen sink. There's just not enough practice time. So you just go with what you know the best. And clearly after halftime, when the offense was struggling to throw the ball, Brian Johnson and Nick Sirianni and Kevin Patullo and all of us said, well, we're just going to run the ball. And even their running game, Adam, was not overly complex. It was inside zone, inside zone, inside zone, right? So there's no doubt in my mind Kenneth Gainwell would have had a good game as well. But there were plays that Swift made, specifically the one where he bounced it center out to the right side and got inside the 5 that you just don't see Kenneth Gainwell make. And you do see DeAndre Swift throughout his career make that play.
Gainwell just didn't have juice. This is what we said after the first game. It was absurd for Swift not to play. They need juice so badly in the backfield. As I talked about and made clear on the pregame show, and it turned out to be right on target, this run game after week 1 had no juice. Now it's got it. And in a big way. And I get it. The Eagles crushed. See, the Vikings are long at defensive end with Davenport and Hunter, who definitely had some place in this game. But inside a D tackle and also attack at inside linebacker, they're not big. And boy, the Eagles blew them off the football. It was incredible. It reminded me of, and I'm sure you would say the same, the Packer game last year where they just absolutely wiped off the Packers front 7.
Yeah, this was something actually cool. It reminded me of the Packer game for the one that Jeffrey Lurie was upset about, right? Remember in Green Bay, 2017, I think, or 18 it was. Yeah.
18, yeah.
But there were games like this last year. I think people forget that last year the Eagles did this against Jacksonville. The Eagles did it against Indianapolis. Remember in the second half, they were struggling a little bit. Yeah. They just went to the ground game. I know that fans want to think that the Eagles have evolved a lot more since then, and they have, but there's going to be games where you struggle and you see things that are different, and it's amazing. It's an amazing, amazing advantage to just be able to say, we'll just run and be good with it. Not there's maybe 3 teams in the NFL, if that many, that could probably say that do that.
It was just something else. I mean, it was Penny. I mean, Penny did come back very late in the game, I should mention, but the fact of the matter is, Swift is incredible and dynamic, explosive. I mean, this is going to be something else. If the coaches don't screw this up, he just brings something that they haven't had in years. It's Swift. Like Sanders certainly had some juice, but not like this. His ability to bounce like he does, Swift, is just incredible. And now you have Gainwell to grind carries with Swift as the explosive part of it. And then Scott, as you said, if they just need a third back, that's it. Now, Penny, he's his guarantee is not very big, but the point with him is like you really need a fourth back. Now, the fourth back could also be in the practice squad, so we're not suggesting they're going to cut Penny, but right now he has no role. If they're all healthy, he's probably going to be inactive. I mean, that's just the way it is. In fact, Sirianni was asked about this. He was just asked about the rotation earlier last week after the New England game. He said there's some weeks, and he might have been talking about Penny. I'm not sure I'm just not sure who he was talking about, but if it was Penny he was talking about, so he was like the guy could get a lot of work, and the next game he could have that kind of role that he had the week before. I think it was probably Penny.
I think he was just in general talking about the hot hand theory of if somebody's flowing well, they'll get the ball that more, like DeAndre Swift.
Well, this is scolding. This is like,
but you know what? There was a role for Penny. There should have been a role for Penny in week 2 because Boston Scott left and they were down just a guy who you don't want to give that many carries. The point you're making, and you're right, and we've heard this from other sources too, is that there's just something that he's lacking right now. He's not dynamic. He's got no juice. You saw in the game, he took a delayed handoff and it was like he was surrounded. He had no first step, no burst. And I don't know if he's bigger than normal. I don't know if the injuries have finally taken their toll on him. Don't know what it is, but I think it's a very fair question. If you're not going to use him in a situation, if he's not ready to play, are you hoping in 3 or 4 weeks he is? Is that why he's still on the 53? Or are you going to make a move? If Trey Sermon goes and doesn't get claimed, is he going to get signed to the practice squad with maybe a move in mind? I think that there's some open-ended questions here with what's going to happen that bear watching in the next 3 or 4 days and see what happens.
Fair, no, very, very fair. Because Swift has not only played himself into a role. The only question is how many touches does he get per game? Now, because they only had 23 attempts and 18 completions, there just was not enough there because they ran the ball so incredibly well. There was just not enough for Swift to be effective in the pass game. He did catch all 3 targets, but no explosives in the pass game with their backs, but they didn't really need it. Right. But the bottom line is going forward, he's dynamic and special outside formation. And I just was kind of blown away by the consecutive carries, as you were talking about. So many instances where he would get the ball, and they throw it. He get the ball, throw it, or give it to Penny. And then Scott, obviously 5 for 40 before he got hurt. I mean, wow, that was something else. It's good to see that they were able to get off the ball like that. And now this matchup, we'll talk later in the week about Tampa, but they've got a pretty stout defense. It won't be so easy.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So speaking of defense for the Eagles, there are 2 players who started because of the injuries. Well, no, there are 2 players who are starting. One of them is an injury situation, and it's kind of given the Eagles defense a little bit of a new look, right? Milton Williams has been out there a lot, starting with the Eagles on the defensive line. Mm-hmm. And Nick Morrow literally found out Andrew DeCecco wrote a great story about this on InsideTheBirds.com. Nick Morrow found out he was going to be starting like an hour before the game. Because remember, he was released and on the practice squad. Everybody thought Christian Ellis was going to be the guy to start. No, Nick Morrow started and wore the green dot on the helmet.
Well, one thing we should tell you, we had Paul Gunther on, the former Raiders defensive coordinator. He told our Patreon subscribers months ago that Nick Morrow, he gave Morrow very early in his career the green dot because he was so smart. Mm-hmm. Now, the thing with Morrow is he typically play around 222, 223. Did the Eagles website list him at 218 or something? Like
somebody reached out to us and asked if he was 218. Yeah. I don't know what they listed him at.
Yeah.
Maybe somebody said on TV. He is light. I mean, still 218 and 220 ain't that much of a difference. Really.
No, I know. That's like Cato Juneville. Cato June was an outstanding weak side linebacker.
Yes,
for the Colts for many years. He played in the teens and low 220s, so you can do it. But look, good story. Did well. The Eagles, we should mention, the Eagles have one of the best run defenses in the National Football League, as we continue to say. No team in the National Football League is deeper at D tackle. They're so good there. Their DN rotation's fine. It's doing well. They're getting pressure on the quarterback. Now, you can say what you want, playing nickel more, sub packages more, backing off, soft zone, whatever the case may be. Yeah, Kirk Cousins got really hot in the second half to bring them back to the game, and that's something they'll have to look at and how they played it.
Yeah.
But they've got some kind of rotation here. It's pretty evident.
How often did we say the biggest change we thought positively for the Eagles defense without Javon Hargrave and with Jalen Carter and with their rotation of DTs, we thought that as long as Jordan Davis and Carter were what they were supposed to be, the Eagles defense, run defense, was going to be better than last year. In fact, we weren't sure if the pass rush would be as good. It's been pretty good so far. I mean, they haven't had like an 8 or 9 sack yet game. We'll see. But they're constantly putting opponents in, well, the first 2 opponents in pretty rough down and distances, right? Like Kirk Cousins does not want to be 2nd and 8. He does not want to be 3rd and 7 and have body. I give him respect, man. He had bodies colliding into him all night long, and he still managed to, throw a couple of touchdowns and make that game close.
The term is staring down the gun barrel from coaches. Yeah. It's just you're willing to take the hit. You're not you're not turning your body. Like Eli Manning would sometimes turn his face with pressure coming in. That's when he threw the really bad pick. No, Cousins did not do that. Now he didn't have one of those Kirk Cousins meltdown games, which we talked about in the pregame. Here, this stuns me. I did not see this coming. I don't know if you know this. You know who's played the most snaps? Well, the way I'm setting up, you will. At D tackle this season?
The most snaps, is it Jalen Carter?
No.
Fletcher?
Yeah, I cannot believe that. That's a shocker.
Crazy?
And you know that's awesome.
Well. And he's playing well.
Right. That is awesome because remember how bad he was? Him and Hargrave week 1 last year. We told it because we talked to a bunch of people who saw the all 22 and they crushed Cox and Hargrave for not hustling and just not playing well enough, to say the least. He is we've heard that he's like their leader of defense. Like he's the guy that the young guys look to.
Yep.
He's playing really well. It's pretty cool, man. I mean, at the twilight of his career, he turns 32 later this year. I mean, he's still doing it. It's a pretty good story.
Yeah, it is. And to your point on Milton Williams, getting in there and in his 3rd year now, he's actually playing the run well.
Yeah.
He's obviously given them some interior burst. He's been important. It's been the Eagles, they got issues and they will take corner and safety and linebacker and not pay as much attention to it, but their ability and their focus and their emphasis on the offensive and defensive lines, overemphasis, is why they win. There's no doubt about it. Because if you would have traded lines, right? If the Vikings had the Eagles' offensive line and defensive line, they would have won that game.
I totally believe it. I hear you. Well, because you're saying because Cousins he got hit. And
yes. If you gave if the Eagles the Vikings' offensive line and defensive line. And had the switch, I think the Vikings would have won that game.
Well, if you would have given them Swift too, yeah.
I don't think it matters. I think because Madison's pretty good.
They could. I mean,
nowhere to run.
Madison is a versatile back, but he's not explosive, and they don't use.
But I don't think DeAndre Swift gets the first 3 yards on that.
Vikings line. That part is true, man. It was something else. It was like the Packer game last year when they just kept running it down their throat. I remember asking DiFilippo this. There was a couple times in his career, it might have been with the Eagles or another team he coached or Cleveland, I don't know. But I remember asking John one time, like, why were you guys running the ball so much? He goes, because it worked. Because he explained it was not their plan. I forget which game it was. He goes, it just was working, so we stay with it. That's coaching. Okay, good job.
Yeah.
And it was something else. I cannot wait till we talk to John about what this looked like. And then Clay and Cosell and their show and our pregame show, folks, we got you covered like nobody else.
Absolutely. All right, so let's move on and talk about the secondary, some of the role changes and the concerns there, and then a little bit of the passing offense. First, we want to remind everybody to check out our friends at phlsportsnation.com. They're enhancing the fans' experience with their coverage of all Philadelphia sports teams. For the fan, by the fan is their motto, so make sure you check them out at phlsportsnation.com, on Twitter at phlsportsnation. And let's hear from our friends at Sky Motor Cars.
Sky Motor Cars in Westchester is a different sort of dealership. All it takes is one look at their Highline pre-owned vehicles that people over the country want and need. Owner Brett Schulter, make sure you don't spend a dime of your money before you purchase the car. Sky Motor Cars allows you to make all the decisions regarding your next vehicle. At Sky Motor Cars, you never have to spend more than necessary. Visit SkyMotorCars.com today or call 610-918-7225.
And if you happen to stop in at Sky Motor Cars in Westchester, PA, make sure you tell them Adam and Geoff sent you. You will get a great deal. All right, new year, same story for the slot. Avonte Maddox hurt, going to be out for a little bit. We'll see. Adam, I think
more than a little bit. It'll be more than a little bit.
It's probably going to be more than a little bit. So let's give. To me, there's 3 options. There's play Mario Goodrich there. Not sure that's the best option. There's try to at times move Bradbury in there and play Job outside. I'm not sure that's the best option either. Or there's sign Josiah Scott off the practice squad and have him out there because
that is not an option. He went on the Steelers.
That's right. That is not
list.
an option. Yeah.
The rare practice squad injury list. I don't know how this happens.
I totally forgot about that. Yeah. So they don't really have a whole lot of great options here, and I don't know where they're going to turn. Oh, I'm sorry. The other option I forgot. This is what I meant. Not the Josiah Scott. Okay. Justin Evans. You can play your big nickel, play Justin Evans in the slot, and then start Terrell Edmonds. Start Justin Evans as your nickel corner, play Terrell Edmonds and Reed Blankenship as your safeties as long as everyone's healthy.
Sure. It's not great. It's not ideal. Goodrich certainly did a yeoman's job in that game, but it's there. They got problems. I mean, this is just, they just don't have the depth. I'll tell you where it really hurts them, the miss on Greedy Williams, because Job really is not ready to be a starting corner. Okay. Because you'd rather your third corner to have experience. Like if your starter gets down, you'd like to turn to that veteran third corner. Last year they got away with it. They didn't have that guy. This year they rolled snake eyes. They missed on Greedy Williams.
Yeah, but he's not I don't think if
but Job. I'm talking Job now. I'm talking Job now. Starting for Job to start over Job. You'd rather go to Greedy Williams instead of Job. He's just not. Because you just saw in this game, he gave up some plays. The communication was not good.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's different from the slot. I mean, I'm assuming.
I'm talking outside right now because Job had some issues in that game.
Right.
You'd rather have experience. They got lucky last year. You and I talked about that ad nauseum last year. How lucky they were that the starters didn't get hurt.
Yeah.
Well, here you go. Bradbury doesn't play. He had an injury, concussion. He was unable to play in the short week. And you can't turn to a veteran to play on the outside. So let's roll over to what you were talking about with the slot. Now, there are like 5 or 6 slot corners out there that are decent, that are available on the street or veterans. So that would make sense to me because they really need experience. They can't. Goodrich, okay, nice story development. And I remember we put this on our show last year. They were cross training him. And it's kind of paid off. He's, nice story in training camp. Did some good things. Had the minor injury, but he did what he could in this game. But right now, he would be the guy. I don't see how they could play Bradbury full time at slot. In fact, to me, I like your point though about Evans. At least they have a backup plan temporarily. But the good thing is, with the game on Monday night, they could work guys out. If they could sign somebody Tuesday after the workouts, get the guy in for the 3 practices, see what the guy could do, whoever that may be. Sign him to the practice squad. Oh, by the way, they have with Evans off the roster. They have one spot open.
We'll have to see what they do there. Obviously, it's not a great situation. No. They'll need to rely on their front 4 to continue to be dominant, but there will be some good quarterbacks who will be able to pick this up. Well, I mean, you saw Kirk Cousins was able to get the Vikings back into the game because he was able to capitalize on those opportunities. So obviously, the Eagles will have to figure out what they're going to do there. Let's talk about the passing game. And because I know everybody's sort of, we had someone reach out to us and say, is it time to on YouTube comment say that the Eagles should change play callers? And I'm thinking, Mike, they're 2 games into the season.
They're 2-0.
They're averaging 29.5 points per game. I think it's not like, I know the offense has been disappointing and certainly has question marks, but it's not like they've scored 17 points in 2 games. They were up 27-7 at one point. Devontae Smith had a huge touchdown. That was a nice throw from Jalen Hurts. So it's not a totally dysfunctional offense. It's just clearly not what it was last year at the moment.
Yeah, they only scored 15 points, I think, the first game offensively, and they scored 34 in this game because they had the slate touchdown the first game.
Right.
So, yeah, it was better. I mean, because they ran the heck out of it. They were incredible on the ground.
Right.
Now, again, only 23 attempts, but there's something missing. We all see it. I mean, first game, Belichick, okay, you got the built-in excuse. It was exactly what we thought it would be. Ugly, muddy. You could have drawn up a tougher game for Brian Johnson for his first game. It's exactly what we thought. Second game, like you said, they did score 34, but not the way we expected it because the Vikings are not very good in the secondary. No, they came out throwing. The Eagles tried shot plays. They hit one of them for the touchdown for Devontae Smith. Then they missed. Then they had such success with the football later in the first quarter. They just stay with it. I mean, that's good coaching. But we see it. It's the issue that we have is, and we've seen this before with Hurts. And actually, Yvonne had a great point about this in our pregame show. Hurts likes to throw the ball downfield, down the sidelines. This game, he was not throwing it inside. He just was not.
Yes, that is a great point. And you have to remember, at this time last year, Hurts hadn't been the MVP Hurts, right? I mean, he started off with an okay game against Detroit. He ran more than he threw. His week 2 game was great, right, against the Vikings, which played a soft zone, but teams were coming after him more. The Lions blitzed the crap out of him in week 1, and that's why he was able to connect with A.J. Brown as much as he did in that game. And then week 3, Washington tried to challenge him early. Then they fell out of the game because they had, I remember Carson got sacked 9 times and turned the ball over.
Yeah.
But if you do you remember Devontae Smith making all those
it was incredible
catches?
That because one down when he went up high for it and hit the ground hard, he only missed one play.
Right, because Washington wasn't just playing cover 2 deep. They were not just keeping everything in front. They were challenging him. So now you've seen the first 2 games, a whole lot of 2-shell. Like they are clearly trying to not let Eagles get behind them. So Jalen's got to recognize that a little better, and so do the offensive brain trust, and start building in some in-breaking stuff, some shorter stuff. Now, Goddard's been open. He's got to start seeing that. He's got to start seeing the running backs getting open, because there have been guys open. Jalen's got to recognize that and sort of like dial it down and trying to push it down the field against certain 2 deep safety looks. When one safety deep, fine, go for it. That's what you do best. That's great. 2 safeties deep, you got to like take what the defense is giving you.
Yeah, because Cosell talked about it in the pregame about in the first game against New England, there was 4 verts and there were throws to be made, and there was a play over the middle, and for some reason Hurts went to the wrong guy, and it's just it's first game, okay, New England, we get it, but this game. Because if you look at the numbers, the passer rating, it was kind of funny because we all saw it. And you saw the people complaining about the passing game, but his passer rating was still pretty good. But that's why passer rating sometimes could be, you could scratch your head of 98, which is pretty good, but it is what it is.
It is. All right. Well, the next 2 games are interesting now. And starting with Tampa, Monday night, 2-0, and they've been, Baker has been more efficient than I thought he'd be, and their defense has been all right. I know their line is kind of questionable, but they've been able to move the ball a ton.
They should. Baker's terrible against the blitz. He gets happy feet. He doesn't handle it well. They have 5 offensive line changes. Wirf's now playing left tackle. The other 4 are new. They should eat in this game. They've had such a good schedule so far. Chicago is awful. Awful. Embarrassingly bad.
Yeah.
They should be like team 35 in the NFL. They're just so bad.
Yeah, that's tough, Adam.
What's that?
I said that's pretty messed up.
Yeah, they're really tough to watch. Fields is a tough watch, to use a Cosell term. He's awful so far. He's got a lot of ability, but he's not seeing it.
Right.
But we'll talk more about this matchups later in the week. But look, it's the Eagles' schedule. Then they play the Washington Commandos after that, who had an incredible comeback at Denver Sunday.
Right, another 2-0 team. Man, the Giants had a great comeback, and Washington had a great comeback. And Dallas is like, Dallas looks like they're hitting the ground running to start the season, as you would expect they would with all the improvements that they made. So it's not going to be easy this year, but, the Eagles are 2-0, and look, I think there's a lot more positives right now than negatives, despite what the outside world might be saying. But clearly, some things that they've got to work through. We'll continue to talk about that. We'll get you more intel on Wednesday for our next pod. And like I said, Q&A Tuesday, Clay and Cosell on Thursday, Derek Gunn Wednesday. We have a great week coming up for you in Inside the Birds. This is going to do it for this episode of Inside the Birds, the leading podcast in Eagles Intel. As always, we thank you for following us and flying with us inside the bird.